Anyone who looked at the timetable may have seen anonymous witness in the singular. Both our anonymous witnesses gave statements some time ago and decided, having seen how things worked this morning, it's something of a testament perhaps to our last witnesses, they decided they would both wish to give their evidence this afternoon. In the case of both, however, or each, I should say, I have to make a restriction order. I'll do it for each separately, starting with witness W4013, who is to be known as Mr. B.E. Bravo Echo, if you don't catch the B.E. The order is this. The name and address of witness W4013 and any other identifying information, such as the witness's image or a description of their appearance, cannot be disclosed or published in any form unless express permission is given by me or by the Secretary to the Inquiry acting on my behalf. Witness W4013 must be referred to only as Mr. B.E. This order remains in force for the duration of the inquiry and at all times hereafter, unless otherwise ordered, and I may vary or revoke the order by making a further order during the course of the inquiry. So far as witness W4014 is concerned, she will be referred to only as Mrs. B.E. Bravo Echo. I order that the name and address of witness W4014 and any other identifying information such as the witness's image or a description of their appearance cannot be disclosed or published in any form unless express permission is given by me or by the Secretary to the Inquiry acting on my behalf. Witness W4014 must be referred to only as Mrs. B.E. The order remains in force for the duration of the inquiry and at all times thereafter, unless otherwise ordered, and I may vary or revoke the order by making a further order during the course of the inquiry. Now, the first step is to have Mr. and Mrs. B.E. separately sworn.
Hello. Your name is known to the inquiry. Take the book in your left hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Ooh, well done.
Your name is known to the inquiry. Repeat after me, please. I swear by Almighty God.
I swear by Almighty God.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence that I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're here, both of you, to tell us about the treatment of your son at the Birmingham Children's Hospital. Your son is still alive.
Correct.
And it's in his interests that you're giving evidence to us, but giving evidence anonymously. But you're giving evidence and telling us about him and what happened to him with his full knowledge and agreement.
Yes.
So he was born in 1980. Is that right?
Correct.
And if you use his name in the course of your evidence, it's absolutely fine, because it's going to be hard for you to talk about him or talk about each other without mentioning his name possibly from time to time. So don't worry if you do, it will not be on any transcript, and everybody here is bound by the order that the chair has made. He was diagnosed with haemophilia A when he was about 6 months old. How did that come about?
Well, as a little boy, he woke up crying. We got up in the middle of the night and wanted him feeding or change his nappy, and he didn't want that. He was still screaming. So I sat on my lap and rubbed his back and found out this almighty great big lump on his back. Shouted. So we both jumped in the car and took him to hospital. They then brought in a doctor, a locum. He looked at him and went, shook his head and says, take him home, give him some paracetamol, see him in the morning. We just moved to from, and then we went back to our own doctor, and he looked, he says, right, what I'm going to do now is going to call for an ambulance. I want you to go to Good Hope. Don't worry about that, we're in the car. Within 20 minutes, we were at Good Hope. We went into Good Hope, went into the intensive care in a room, basically. Doctors come in, looked at it, shook their head, prodded him, went back out. That went on for about an hour and a half. What is it? Is it a growth or is it an abscess? That's what we were told. It was a very hot day, and my son hadn't had anything to drink or eat, and by about 5 o'clock, he then got moved to a ward. They tried to take blood from him, and they couldn't. So what they did, they wrapped him up in a blanket where I actually held him, and they took blood from his neck, and then he went up to the ward, was able to get something to eat, and then they came to us and said, I'm ever so sorry, we're transferring you to the Children's Hospital. So again, back in the car, straight to the Children's Hospital, in intensive care again, seen a doctor. She decided to take more blood, and I said, question, why more blood? You've already taken the blood. Can't you use the blood from, no, we can't, we've got to take. So that went on. Then shortly after that, they then admitted him into hospital, then into a ward where we then stayed with him all night. It was only the following morning that we found out what the problem was with my son. Sorry.
Don't worry.
That's okay. And we'd never heard of haemophilia. It's not in family, it's not in my family. It's out of the blue. We don't know nothing about it. And I can remember just thinking, what is it? Dr. Heal appeared, and he just explained the haemophilia, and he's got to have treatment for his blood, to clot his blood, which I think he was in there for about 3 or 4 days. And we were then sent home with referrals backwards and forwards to the hospital with things like that. That's what happened with, and that's how we found out that it was a haemophilia.
And indeed, as part of that process, there was a period of time in which the hospital or doctor thought that it might be child abuse.
Yes. Yeah. They when we was at the Good Hope, the police were brought into it and questioned me and sort of questioned. There was no allegations or anything like that. And then they sort of apologised, saying we're ever so sorry, but we don't know. But a couple of days later, I went back to see the GP and had a right go at him. I wanted a public apology because he should have. But as he said to us, I don't come across this all the time, but he should have been more aware.
Now, in 1981, so he was a year or so old, if that, he started to be treated with factor VIII concentrates, and the product that he was treated with was the Armour product, factor VIII. Were you ever given any information at that point in time about any risks of hepatitis associated with that
Nothing
product?
at all. It wasn't mentioned anything at all about anything. We were just gladly there's treatment there.
And was there any reference, as it went into 82, 83, to any risks associated with AIDS?
No, not at this point.
And I think the two of you shared responsibility for the hospital appointment. So sometimes it would be you, and sometimes it would be you.
Yeah.
Was cryoprecipitate as a treatment ever offered to you for him?
Not in that phrase, no. It was just that we're giving this other treatment. And that's how it was done. We didn't know what treatments there were. It was just that this one is a new one, come on the market, and to carry on like that.
And were you ever told about the possibility of NHS concentrate rather than the American armour product? Was that ever discussed with you as far as...
I don't think it were.
Do you remember that ever being discussed?
No.
No.
Now, we've got UK HCDO records which just show the treatments given on an annual basis. So if we have on screen, please, WITN 40130012, and we go to page 6. We can see, if we look at the bottom of this table, the treatment for each year. 1981 at the bottom of the table, Birmingham Children's Factor 8, and that's the Armour US product. 1982, again, Factor 8. 1983, Factor 8. 1984, Factor 8. 1985, Factor 8. So it would appear from this that this was the only product in those 5 years of your son's young life that he received. Is that your memory?
Yes.
Now, how did you learn that your son had been infected from these treatments with HIV?
Started being ill. He got yellow jaundice. We then took him to the hospital, and we found out then they basically said got yellow jaundice, which he's got hepatitis. Okay, what's that? What do you mean by that? He's just got hepatitis, and we've just got to watch what we're doing. What implications was that? Make sure that everything's washed, cleaned, sterile. Make him drink out of his own beaker. Everything else like that was just okay. That's fine, which we did. That's how we found out that he got hepatitis. And that's all we do. And every time they actually spoken to us about it, it was always said hepatitis. It was never said behind the scenes, oh, he's got HIV. It was never said that. It's just hepatitis until it was about 11. So we weren't aware of that at that particular time.
So this reference, I think, in the documents to having jaundice, being yellow, you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's January 1985 from the records that he was diagnosed as having hepatitis B, as you've described. So is this right? You didn't realise, or you weren't told at the time that he was HIV positive?
No.
We've heard from other witnesses this morning of a meeting of parents, a general meeting that took place, possibly 2 meetings, but certainly at least 1 meeting in around October 1984, at which there was Dr. Hill held a meeting, lots of parents, and gave some information about HIV and the factor concentrates with which boys at the hospital have been treated. Did you attend any such meeting?
No, we didn't.
No.
Just in terms of the hepatitis B, that led to issues in relation to your son's schooling. What was the problem? What happened?
Because hepatitis is a notifiable disease, the school had to be informed. Now, as soon as they knew that, they kicked him out of school. And they would not let him. So we had a case on our hands to get him back into school. And they said we tried to get the hospital to back us up. And also the council, they refused to have him back. So we went to the papers. And eventually he was allowed back into school. There were a few things that was said to us. Well, he can have private teaching at home. We said no, it's not, because we want him to have a fair life, want him to mix with people and everything else like that. Well, we can send him to another school, basically. I says no, he's not going to another school. So we wanted him at that school. We just moved our house from where we were to be right next to the school. And that's what we bought. Where you are now, that's as far as the school was. And so we could be there with him and anything like that. Don't pick up the phone, just walk over. And to be near our family. Because at that particular time, we just got... And so it was difficult to do everything. So Nan and Grandad sort of coming out and wherever they could. If they had to go to the hospital, or I had to go to the hospital and everything else like that. But that's how we knew. And we took them, eventually we with a big fight on our hands, we got him back at school because he's a very bright lad. And I'm not letting him go to another school.
Now, how and when did you find out that he was infected with HIV?
Well, I would probably say he was about 11 or 12 when we actually found out. Nobody at the hospital actually told us when we was going there. Would you agree with that?
He was told by himself.
Yes.
Yeah, he went to see, it was an outpatient appointment with Dr. Hill, and went in on his own and came out. But he didn't speak to us about it because he assumed that we knew. And it wasn't until a few years later he had spoken to us and said, what Dr. Hill had said to him. He said, but I thought you knew, Mum and Dad, I thought you both knew. He said, no, he wasn't told.
So you had, without knowing, a son who was HIV positive, and a haemophiliac, so someone who would be prone to bleeding potentially. At home, you had 2 other children, young children, and you didn't know that your son at that point was HIV.
Even though we basically said the Children's Hospital is our second home, the amount of times a week we would spend there going back treatments and everything else, because he was put on prophylactic treatment because his joint bleeds. He got 2 really bad elbows, and they were always back and forth, here we go again, or he'd done something, he knocked his head. So it was our second home, and lots of times he stayed there.
And then if we just have up on screen WITN 4013006, please. We can see these are some treatment records, and if we look towards the bottom of the page, we can see a date 17th of December 1984, and then it says heat treated commenced. Do you recall any discussion with you about the switch to a heat treated product, or what the significance of that might be?
No.
And then if we could have back on screen the UKHCDO records, so WITN 4013012, please. And we go to page 8 this time. We've got dates there. There's reference to a sample date in November 1987 and a HIV positive result. And then we've got the entries, date last negative, date first positive, which would be testing on stored samples. And that gives a date for his last negative test is July 1983, first positive April 1984, which would suggest seroconversion between those 2 dates. You say, I think in your statements, blood samples would be taken for testing routinely. Yeah. Did you understand usually what those tests were for? Were you told that there was HIV testing being undertaken?
No, just keeping a regular check on his bloods.
And also on the the hepatitis, because they might have thought it was going to affect his liver and things like that, so they wanted to make sure that was being tested.
When you learnt that he was HIV positive, what can you recall of the impact of that on the two of you and on your son?
A very big impact, because I sort of, did I blame you or did you blame me? You know, it was arguments, and it's our son, and he was very upset, and, you know, what's going to happen? Where are we going to go down this line? Because there was so much stigma about things. You got HIV, you got this, you're going to have a gun at your head, thinking all of a sudden he's gone. You know, like we heard today, I think we're very, very lucky. We are very lucky to still have and things like that. But it was a big shock to both of us when we found out, and yeah, wasn't it?
And just not having nobody to talk to. We just couldn't talk to anybody. We'd only got each other.
Yeah. We didn't know, we didn't understand nothing about it. No, we wasn't given any counselling. Nobody talked to us about it. You know, it would just carry on and just carry on what you're doing.
And I think it's right to say that members of your wider family did not know.
They still don't know.
Still don't.
This is the first time we've actually spoke about this in the 40 years that we've been a very quiet family within letting people know. Even my mum, who's 90, she doesn't know about, because she would sort of push him away and don't want to love him and kiss him and this, that and the other, even today. So she's a very, very funny woman, my mum is. So, and it's only been very local friends, sort of like married now, but when he was courting, he'd been courting this girl for a while now, and he got involved with her quite badly and fell in love, as you do. And then he came home crying one night. And what's the matter? He says, I finished. What do you mean, finished? Dad, I can't do it. I can't do it. What do you mean, you can't do nothing? He says, I can't tell about the haemophilia and this, that and the other, what I've got. I said, what do you mean, why? And he was like that for over a week. So we said, come on. So we rang him up. He was ringing every day, speak to him, and so upset and depressed and everything. And so we went round and sat down with and explained to everybody else like that, and they were fine with it. And then they started courting again, which was great, and they still are.
And you said in your statements that you thought you were going to lose your son. You thought your son would die.
But, you know, with everything else, as soon as you hear that HIV, next comes AIDS, then there's no treatment for it at the moment. There isn't anything that's there. It's just watch your son deteriorate.
And he began to be very poorly. He developed severe migraines.
Yes,
He was having headaches all the time. When he first job he used to have, he used to go sorting out computers for people, industry, because as I said, he's very rare, but it was driving. And I had to say to him, no, you're not doing that, because he would bring me up sometimes and say, Dad, I've had to pull over, I've got a severe headache, migraine, I can't even see the road, I can't even, basically I blacked out. And I said, no, you can't do that. So he then came to work for me, which I created a job for him. But he used to love that job, but he had terrific headaches. He'd have to go into a room, lie down. He was prescribed some tablets to take before his treatment and throughout. There was two different colours. One's when you've got one, and one's when you know you're going to get it. And he sort of, yeah.
And I'm just going to read a little of what he has said in his statement to the inquiry. I think it will resonate with those who heard the evidence earlier today in particular, in terms of the experience of a teenage boy hearing this news. So he said this in his statement. In the mid-90s, when Dr. Hill told me of my infections, I thought my life was over. I felt that it shattered all my plans of a normal life, such as finding a wife and having children of my own and even growing old. I felt that my world was crumbling. All I wanted to know was when I was going to die. It definitely had a big psychological impact on me, as I didn't see the point in doing anything and I constantly questioned everything. I hated the thoughts that used to go through my head. My behaviour soon spiralled out of control. I wasn't a nice person to be around, and I was always snappy and didn't want to know or be told anything. I was just angry at the world. And then he talks about feeling there was a ticking clock and that he'd already been issued with his death sentence.
Yeah.
And you as his parents were having to do the best you could to help him through that.
That's right.
And also tested positive for hepatitis C. Do you recall when you were told about the hepatitis C, or when he was told about the hepatitis C?
No.
And he went through interferon treatment over the years, or interferon and ribavirin, on 3 occasions, each of them unsuccessfully.
Yeah.
And it was only more recently with one of the newest treatments that he was able to take that and clear hepatitis C. What's been the impact on the two of you as parents of your son's diagnosis, and over the years the impact that's had on him physically and mentally? How has that been for you as his mum and dad?
It's been fear, thinking, what's going to happen, how long have you got? Because again, the stigma sort of was there, and in the media and everything else. Very upsetting. Mum's upset, crying a lot of times, because she's very upset, sort of what's going on, and as you would do, and it's, we've seen, yeah.
From your point of view?
What do you think?
Well, everything just changed for me. I just went sort of bad-tempered, nasty, like aggressive towards people, didn't trust people because we'd been told lies about him anyway, and that sort of thing. I just feel that it changed us. We'd only got. It was just the 5 of us, wasn't there?
Yeah.
It was like 5 of us against everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's why we sort of kept it quiet. We deal with it in our own way.
They were very good though, weren't they? They didn't ask a lot of questions. They grew up saying it was special, right? And that was all they ever said, it was special. But as they got older, they asked questions, which we've answered their questions. So they know all about him, but they don't talk about it.
No, their friends don't know either. So.
Again, I'm just going to briefly read something from his statement about the stigma, and then ask for any additional reflections you have. He said this: "Children can be nasty, and although I did not tell anyone about my infections, they knew of my haemophilia. Neither my parents nor I were able to talk to anyone about our situation, and with the stigma, having people constantly accusing me of having HIV and telling me I was going to die was very difficult to deal with. I always used to tell people who asked me that I was fortunate and did not get any infections. I was so worried about the stigma. I was forced to live in silence with HIV and hepatitis, which is still always a big cloud over me. Had to pre-plan everything through my life, from relationships to where I was working to where I was going on holiday. This made me have a really negative outlook on life." And then, in turn, having talked about his ability then to talk to his wife about it, says this: "This whole ordeal has in turn put a strain on my wife and her parents, as they all have no one other than who is already in our tight-knit circle to confide in. This has left all of us very isolated and at times secluded." That it resonates very much, I think, with what you've told us about how the two of you felt.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, very much so.
Just in the evidence that we've already heard today about how things were done at the Birmingham Children's Hospital, there are a handful of themes that emerge, and I just wanted to ask for your reflections on them. First was the question of trust. The witnesses we've heard from this morning talked about how they trusted the doctors. They trusted that the doctors would be doing the right thing, giving the right treatment to their children, and then a sense of, in differing degrees, how that trust had been betrayed. Do you have any reflections on that issue?
Yeah, we trusted them. We trusted them hardly because that was their profession. They knew what was going on. But it's only been today that we've heard a few things that's just, opened our eyes, basically. Dr. Hill knew about it way before he was born. So what was going on there? Why was he given this treatment? Is it all to do with money? Buy it off the government, at a cheaper price and this, that, and the other, to do that? You don't know. I don't know either. But that's what you do. You trust the profession, and that's what they knew about. Where Dr. Hill, he was dealing with children for a long, long time, and we're a minority as to how many children he actually was dealing with. So yeah, we put our trust in him to help us or help and the team that were there.
Do you have any reflections on that question of trusting in the doctors?
No.
Would you trust him again?
I don't think I can.
No.
Another issue that has emerged from the evidence that we've heard today is the lack of choice. So not being given a choice of treatments, but essentially
Or was there a choice?
being given just the one treatment and not being told of alternatives. That was your experience?
Yeah, well, we wasn't given a choice. What choice would there have been? You could have had the British one, or you could have had, but that wasn't available. That wasn't there.
No.
Again, I've just heard you today about National Health one. We was never spoke about National Health. The only one that we were given is the one that had got. So what choice have we got?
And then the other theme, or one of the other themes that's emerged, is the question of communication, how information was given about diagnosis, and what information or advice or support was provided. You've told us how you learnt about
But there
your
was no
son's
support.
diagnosis. That was going to be my next question. Did you get advice, information,
No.
support from the hospital?
No, nobody came to see us. Nobody said, we need to sit you down. Nobody said this.
No.
Nobody told us how to treat or anything like that. There was no support there whatsoever as far as I was concerned. We went to the hospital, seen the hospital. They'd come and examine him, whether it was a local doctor, one of the doctors, Sister Marion. Oh, yeah, he needs treatment, give him this treatment. That was it. There was no support, and there was no sit down and I need to tell you what's going on. When I had the meetings with Dr. Hill, he'd go in and just look at his arms and this, that, and the other. How are you feeling? Yeah, I'm okay. Okay, write a few things on his notes, which we did. Today, we've seen more notes that we've ever seen. That was never given to us, and that was it. Appointment next month. So there was nothing there to tell us or to guide us in the way to go. I don't think there is. Well, what would you have done? I don't know.
I'm just going to turn and see whether your legal representatives have any further matters. You just give me a moment.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just, I'm just, I think very helpfully invited to just flag up one additional paragraph in your son's statement when he gives his perspective on your position. He says this: "My parents suffered a great deal from back when they were both told of the heartbreaking reality that their only child had been given multiple life-threatening viruses caught from a contaminated batch by the very people they entrusted their son's well-being to. They had no information about the viruses and felt their son's future had been taken away. They were forced to suffer in silence as they had no one to turn to with a stigma around, and they could only talk to the hospital staff who were the same people who had contaminated their son." That's his take. Is that one you recognise?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't add that to anything to that. That's how it was.
Sir, do you have any questions for our witnesses?
Yes, I do. And I want to ask this in turn, but first of all, to you, Mrs. B, if I may. The question is, what do you think has been the single worst or biggest consequence for you personally out of what has happened?
Just all what's happened to my son, that's all.
Giving him the treatment.
The treatment.
One at a time, on this occasion, please.
Just not telling us, not informing us. You know, sometimes all you need is to be told. You just want somebody to tell you something, to give you some information, you know. That's probably all I can say, is just somebody to talk to us.
And what about you?
He should never have been given the treatment. They knew it was infected, and he should never have been given the treatment. If he hadn't been given that treatment, he'd still be a haemophilia, but he wouldn't be where he is today. He wouldn't have... so, yeah, they should not... If they knew about it, which they did clearly know about it, but they still carried on giving the treatment.
What I'm hearing you saying is that the worst aspect, so far as you personally are concerned, is a sense of injustice.
Yes. Well, even like I said earlier, it's been having a loaded gun. We don't know when it's going to go off. Even now, with the treatment he's got, we still don't know. I mean, we're one of the lucky ones, and we put it down to being one of the lucky ones. I've heard of people, the children dying. Parents don't die before the children, you know. So, yeah. So would be me. They shouldn't have given the treatment if they knew it was infected, which they did years before this happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to just ask each of you in turn if there's anything else that you'd like to add. If I start with you, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I don't know.
You don't have to say anything, it's all right. It's only if you want to.
No.
And you?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks to the inquiry with what's actually happening, your colleagues and everything else. Without your help, this would still be brushed under the carpet, and none of us would be aware of what's happened and everything else. And yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir Brian?
Well, can I thank you both? I think no one listening to you, Mr. B.E., would realise that it is the first time that you've been able to bring yourself to talk openly, albeit anonymous within the inquiry. You're still talking openly about what happened. And Mrs. B.E., your very different reaction, I think, is again the same. It's one of bravery, bringing yourself to say what you've said and to express between the two of you your sense of injustice, your sense of uncertainty, and your sense of just wanting to be told and not being told.
Thank you.
So can I thank you for that, and having the courage to sit there and tell us. It's been very valuable.
And thank you.
Thank you.
So that's our evidence for today. Tomorrow we have 4 witnesses, the last 2 of whom will be giving evidence anonymously, and the issue or particular theme that we're going to be hearing about tomorrow is the position of those recently diagnosed with hepatitis C.
So those recently diagnosed with hepatitis C, evidence panel tomorrow, starting at 10. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.